An antique firearm is a term to describe a firearm that was designed and manufactured prior to the beginning of the 20th century. Although the exact definition of what constitutes an antique firearm varies between countries, the advent of smokeless powder or the start of the Boer War are often used as cut-off dates. Antique firearms are usually collected because of their historical interest and/or their monetary value. Antique firearms can be divided into two basic types, muzzle-loading and cartridge firing. Muzzle-loading antique firearms are not generally owned with the intent of firing them, although original muzzle-loaders can be safely fired, after having them thoroughly inspected, but instead are usually owned as display pieces or for their historic value. Cartridge firing antique firearms are more commonly encountered as shooting pieces, but most antiques made from the 1860s through the 1880s were made with relatively mild steel and were designed to use black powder. They were limited to low bullet velocities and had heavily arcing rainbow bullet trajectories. However, advances in steel metallurgy and the advent of mass-produced smokeless powder in the early 1890s gave cartridge rifles of this new era much higher velocities and much flatter trajectories than their predecessors. These advances, typified by cartridges such as 8mm Lebel 1886, 7x57mm Mauser, .303 British, and 7.62x54 mm made many smokeless powder rifles manufactured in the 1890s quite capable of accurate shooting at long distances. Many antique smokeless powder cartridge firearms from the 1890s can still compete satisfactorily in target shooting events alongside their modern counterparts. British shotguns made between 1861 and 1890 represent some of the finest examples of custom gun-making from Europe. Antique cartridge firearms are highly sought by collectors and shooters. This trend began in the 1950s as before World War II, antique firearm collecting was not very popular. Collecting grades differ between modern firearms and antiques due to their age. For example, a modern firearm retaining 90% of its finish may be considered very good condition, yet an antique firearm can be classed the same as having 80% of its finish. In Canada, antique firearms are defined under PC 1898 to 1664. One minor source of confusion for antique gun collectors and dealers is that in Canada, the threshold for antique status is 1 year earlier than in the United States. 11. In the U.S. firearms made before 1899 are antique, but in Canada, they are defined as firearms made before 1898. In Canada, the Webley MKI qualifies as a status antique, as it was manufactured prior to 1898, and was designed to use Webley .455 MKI caliber ammunition. These revolvers were used by both the police and the military in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, and are now sought-after examples of antique Canadiana. Thanks for watching.